Hello, tonight on Business Live, Institute of Economic Affairs proposes imposition of debt ceiling of 60% of GDP with strict oversight by Parliament. Ahead, we will engage Director of Research at the Institute, Dr. John Kwache. Also, Ghana to struggle for an IMF deal as Fitch downgrades the country's borrowing capacity to restrictive default. We will hear from a senior finance lecturer.
After the debt restructuring, we are witnessing same and further downgrades. What it means to us is that it will become very difficult for us to get the IMF bailout.
Always a pleasure to join you. I am Pious, Kojo, Baka, and those were your latest commodities updates. Straight to our very first story. Ghana will struggle to get an IMF deal following Fitch downgrade of the country's borrowing capacity to restrictive default. That's according to a senior finance lecturer at the University of Cape Coast, Siriam Kawo. But the ratings agency downgraded Ghana's long-term local currency issuer default to RD from CCC. Now, it also downgraded to CC from CCC and subsequently withdrew their issue ratings on 5 local currency bonds issued prior to the domestic debt exchange program. Now, it attributed rating action to missed payments on some of the local currency bonds issued prior to the domestic debt exchange program. Now, speaking earlier on the marketplace, Mr. Kawa called for transparency in its operations.
These issues are not new to us, because we have seen these downgrades before the debt restructuring. After the debt restructuring, we are witnessing same and further downgrades. What it means to us is that it will become very difficult for us to get the IMF bailout. It is also showing us that the country is not doing so much in terms of us working assiduously with the external debt creditors, so that we'll be able to get the IMF bailout. And missing out on the IMF agenda for April tells us that there is a lot of work that we need to do in order to get the deal working out for us as a country.
Wow. Did you say it becomes difficult for us to get an IMF program?
Yes, it is going to be very difficult for us to do that, because as we speak, the external creditor committee that is supposed to be formed to negotiate the deal with IMF, to negotiate our getting the financial assurance to present to the IMF for the bailout to be successful, has not been formed yet. If the external creditor committee has not been formed yet, and that committee is very vital for us to get these deals, then it is something that we need to look at. And you look at the external credit rating agencies, they've told us that the debt restructuring that has been done has been able to achieve only 1% reduction in the total debt to GDP ratio, 1%. And we also heard of the finance ministry telling us that there is a need for other individual and institutional debt holders in the country to come on board. All this put together is telling us that there is a lot of work we need to do to make our debt sustainable and raise enough domestic revenue.
And more on the economy, and the Institute of Economic Affairs, IEA, is proposing a strict oversight by Parliament over borrowing and debt accumulation as per Article 181 of the 1992 Constitution, a move it believes will significantly reduce the country's unsustainable debt. Now, the economic and policy think tank is also recommending the imposition of a debt ceiling of 60% of GDP at any time, which is generally regarded to be a sustainable threshold. Now, let's get on Zoom and speak to the Director of Research at the Institute, Dr. John Kwache, for more. Grateful you could join me, Dr. Kwache, here on Business Live. Now, you are saying that this rule could prevent perennial debt crisis. Help me understand exactly how.
Did you ask me the question, please?
Yes, I did. So I'm asking you to tell me, you're saying that this rule could prevent perennial debt crisis, and I'm asking, how is that so?
Well, we are where we are because we are not able to practice fiscal discipline. We don't live within our means, and we record budget deficits, and borrow to finance it on a regular basis. And that's what has brought us to this unsustainable debt situation. So what we are saying is that, rather than leaving our economic managers, to manage the economy on a discretionary basis, of course there are some rules, but we are saying the rules may not be enough. So let's introduce some more rules. Other countries that have done so have performed much better than us. So we are saying let's impose, well, there's already a fiscal ceiling, debt ceiling, deficit ceiling of 5%. We are even asking that it is brought down further to 3%. This is what the ECOWAS convergence criteria is. In addition to that, and specifically on the debt, we are saying that instead of taking us to where we were before HIPIC, before 2004, when our debt to GDP ratio had risen to over 100%, we are back there, So we are saying that we should impose a debt ceiling on the economic managers and institutionalize it.
Now, I want you to throw more light on the Fiscal Responsibility Act for me, because we do know that it's been suspended. Do you recommend it to be enforced?
I had done so before, but I was saying that we are also calling for stricter enforcement of our rules, the fiscal rules, the debt rules, and so on. But if they are institutionalized in the Constitution, then of course we believe that the enforcement will be stronger, because you have a lot more people overseeing it, and that's why we are calling for it to be entrenched in the Constitution.
All right, so from where you sit, how close do you think we are in securing a program with the IMF?
Well, to be honest with you, that's something that I've not been following it that closely, but I know the way the IMF works. I worked there for 10 years, and they are very careful the way they craft, their agreement, and I've seen that, the debt sustainability requirement is something that they are very, very keen about. In other words, they want to make sure that whatever fiscal adjustment and debt restructuring that we do in combination will determine, a sustainable debt path for Ghana because they have a template. So when you come back and you say we have, achieved this much debt restructuring with the domestic creditors and then external, they put it into their template and see whether it gives them that sustainable path. If it doesn't, then they will ask you to go back. So I'm not familiar with, the numbers, the figures, and then the template, how it is, panning out, how close we are getting to sustainability. If I had the figures, I'll be able to give more definite, answer to that.
Well, during the spring meetings over the past few weeks, government did indicate that we are that close, getting that assurance from our creditors and, of course, Paris Club. Now, as it stands now, information on that is scanty, so we certainly don't know what exactly is happening as to whether our creditors or the Paris Club, have given that assurance. Is that also a concern to you, especially when the communication is not, forthright?
Yeah, you also have the same problem with availability of information. That's what you are confirming. No, this government, since last year, when they started negotiating with the staff, every time they tell us they are getting closer, they are getting closer. They have reached the staff level agreement. That one, I said it is not the end of these negotiations at all, because I look at the language that they are using in the communiques that they issue, and they are saying that there should be a combination of fiscal adjustment and debt restructuring to get to the sustainability level. But it looks like our government is not prepared to do much of the fiscal adjustment, which some CSOs and the others, we have made proposals, concrete proposals, but they are putting so much hope or focus on their debt restructuring and not doing so much on the fiscal adjustment side. So I am not sure, how soon we can get to the sustainability path.
And that suggests to say that we are not likely to meet our timeline as well, because government or the finance minister indicate that we'll secure the deal, let's say somewhere in May, early May.
I think there's a credibility gap there. There's certainly a credibility gap, because how many times
Dr. Kwache's line, I'm told, has frozen, and we shall bring him on to conclude that part of the question. A reminder, you're still watching Business Live with me, Pious Kojo Baka. Let's continue with some other stories. And Director General of the World Trade Organization, Dr. Ngozi Nkojo-Iweala, is urging African countries to work more on improving macroeconomic stability to support trading activities on the continent. According to her, it will take more years for the continent to have a strong currency to match up the American greenback. Speaking at a forum held by the Institute of Economic Affairs, she called for strong platforms to ease intra-trade activities.
It will take a long time because trading in a currency depends on confidence. And the dollar has by far and away, for many years, been the currency of use. People trust the stability in the US, the macroeconomic management there, the political management. So the dollar has generated so much confidence that it has become the currency of choice. In order to have another currency that matches it, you need that level of confidence. And that means you also need that level of stability in the economy of that country. So it will take a long time before we find currency. I'm not saying it won't work. I'm just saying it will take time to find another international currency that engenders that level of confidence. In the meantime, what we can develop and what the African Continental Free Trade Area is developing are platforms that enable us to trade in our own local currencies here. So I think that is what is happening, and that's a direction in which we can move. Of course, the lady mentioned the volatility in the currencies, the depreciation, the difficulty. These are the teething problems you will see as more and more countries get onto that platform, which enables us to trade in our own currencies. And as countries manage their economies better, there are some things you have to do for yourself.
Now, the Cybersecurity Authority is hoping to get second cycle schools to develop interest in cybersecurity's careers, as well as helping the country to transact a business online safely. To this end, the second edition of the National Cybersecurity Challenge has been launched for selected schools across the country. The initiative by the authority will give an opportunity to some selected participants to undertake internship programs at some sister agencies under the Ministry of Communications and Digitalization. Ifua Brown-Asen is the Director of Child Online Protection at the Cybersecurity Authority.
One of the outcomes is to have cyber clubs in the schools. So for Northern Business School last year, they even went further to do awareness creation in their region. They will go to radio stations. That's the students who participated now became peer educators for their peers and also for their communities. So what we do, and they send us reports regularly. So what we do is we keep an eye on them. We'll be also keeping an eye on the cyber clubs. But the major issue is to keep the conversation of being cyber hygiene as much as possible for all students. And for last year too, the winners also had, were supposed to enjoy internship here. They are still in school, so when they are done, they would be here for a few weeks for internship. And for the upcoming one, we are also collaborating with some of our sister organizations, both local and international, to also have some of the contestants to have some internship with them, because we talked about career opportunities within this competition.
And that's it for the bulletin. I am Pious Kojo Baka. You can always get business stories when you log on to myjoyonline.com/business. Let's do the same time tomorrow. Bye-bye.